Well, welcome back. Before we begin this next episode, I want to talk a little bit about what I meant by certainty. There's nothing wrong with being certain. There's nothing wrong with knowing deeply and without apology that you are a child of God. You are responsible for your actions. You are accountable for your behavior. You are devoted to something that matters. That kind of certainty does not close you. It steadies you. It gives you a place to stand when things are unclear, when life is difficult, when the next step is not obvious. So when I say, how do we act after certainty collapses, I'm not talking about this. I'm not asking you to give up what you know is true or suggesting that giving up certainty is inevitable. For some of us, certainty collapses. And when it does, something else is required. In these next episodes, I'm inquiring about something different, and it is much more specific. There is another kind of certainty. For a long time, certainty was given to us through religion, culture, and shared belief. When that falls away, we look for something to replace it. The kind of certainty that says, I'm right, so I don't have to look at the facts again. This is justified, so I don't have to question the morality of it. This is just how it is. This kind of certainty does not steady you. It protects you from discomfort. And sometimes it protects you from reality. Ethical adulthood in its first iteration was about what happens to ethical people when the certainty that they look toward for stability falls away. Now, ethical adulthood looks toward a new knowing. It's the ability to know what must remain certain and what must remain open. You can be certain that people deserve dignity and still not know what to do in a complicated situation. You can be certain you are accountable and still not be sure how to repair what has been broken. You can be devoted to a cause and still question how it is you come to that devotion. Certainty used this way does not make you rigid. It makes you anchored. And from that place, you can move, even when you don't know exactly how. This person needn't act without certainty. This person asks what is certain and what is not. This is where the work begins. Now that the original framework has been pressure tested, in other words, now that it's been heard, seen, and understood by a variety of people who know me, one of the most common questions I got asked was, who is this for? Ethical adulthood was originally for, well, people like me, the author. But you might not know me. But you can see who this kind of person is in someone like Ted Lasso. Ted is not settled or happy or calm all of the time. At one point, he has a panic attack in the middle of a game and he has to speed walk off the field. He doesn't force himself to keep going. He doesn't try to explain it away. He doesn't pretend it didn't happen. He leaves. And later, when it becomes clear that something deeper is going on, he does something even more difficult. He gets help. You can see it in someone like Rebecca Welton. She begins as someone who knows how to live well. She's ethical, dignified, principled. But after being deeply betrayed, she loses contact with that part of herself. She organizes her life around revenge. She pulls other innocent people into it. And then at a certain point, she sees the harm she's done. She tells the truth. She takes responsibility. She begins to repair. So those are two characters from Ted Lasso. Let me also talk about another really great show, The Good Place. In this show, you can see it in someone like Chidi Anagonye. Chidi, well, he understands ethics deeply. He can think through every angle, every consequence, every possible outcome. But he cannot make decisions and act. He needs to be certain. And because he cannot, this keeps him from moving at all. His commitment to getting it right keeps him from action. And at some point, the question shifts from what is the perfect answer to can you act even without certainty? This is who ethical adulthood was built for. Not people who have it all together. People who, when something breaks, can recognize it, not deny it, and begin to respond. People who can feel discomfort without immediately escaping it. Take responsibility when they see clearly. And act, even when they don't know exactly how. So this work assumes something. It assumes that even when things are hard, there's enough space inside you and around you to respond. But many people are not here. I asked an ethics professor, a human resource vice president of a multinational corporation, an 83-year-old great-grandmother, two 20-something college graduates, a 30-year-old mathematician, and finally myself to really sit with the framework. That pressure testing revealed a lot. What became clear was this: what looks like avoidance in one life can be overload in another. And if we don't account for that, the work starts to misfire. I'm not throwing the framework away, but I am going to evolve it in response to real world clarity. We have to respond to reality here. Otherwise, well, the framework can begin to look cruel. Many people are not operating from the kind of space I've discussed so far. People with enough support, stability, and space to respond. Many people are not there because their lives are structured in a way that leaves very little room to respond at all. Some lives are already full of responsibility, full of pressure, full of ongoing demands that do not stop long enough for repair. And when life looks like that, the question is no longer, how do I grow? It becomes, how do I not collapse? Other lives are shaped by something different. Not too much responsibility, but not enough engagement with reality. Where isolation, loneliness, mental health struggles, avoidance patterns, or a lack of structure mean that things that need attention are not being met. And here, the question shifts again, not how do I protect myself from overload, but where can I begin to meet what is mine? Ethical adulthood is not one thing. It's not a single standard applied to everyone. It depends on the life you're living. It depends on what is being asked of you. It depends on what capacity is actually available. Some people need to grow. Some people need relief. Some people need to begin. And if we don't account for that, the work does not land. And worse, it does harm. So we have to start again, not by abandoning the framework, but by regrounding it in reality. If the original essay addressed those with room to respond, the next sections describe what happens when that room is reduced, overwhelmed, or no longer reliable. You know, in some lives, people cannot pause. They're overwhelmed. In others, they cannot engage. Contact with reality is reduced. And in some, they cannot resolve because every option carries a cost. The difference is not the person involved, it's the amount of space available to respond. So let's start with one condition: when life asks too much. There are lives where the problem is not avoidance. The problem is volume. Too much to carry, too much to respond to, too much without pause. A woman with a new baby, already dealing with depression, already stretched before the child arrived. The days are full before they even begin. An emerging adult in a house where no one has enough capacity to stabilize anything for long. No structure, no consistent support, no clear path forward. An older adult managing anxiety while living alongside someone whose mind is not always steady. The future is uncertain and the body is already tired. Well, these are not edge cases. These are real conditions that shape how much a person can do, decide, or hold. And in these conditions, something important changes. The work is no longer growth. The work is stability. When a life is already this full, asking a person to tolerate discomfort can become a distortion because they're already tolerating more than most frameworks account for. What they do not need is more pressure. They do not need to expand or optimize or extract meaning from every difficulty. They need something simpler. They need relief where relief is possible and permission where it isn't. Ethics in this condition has to change form, not disappear, not soften into anything goes, but shift from expansion to protection. It can look like this: not taking on one more emotional demand, letting something remain unresolved for now, just saying less instead of explaining more, choosing rest when the body is already signaling strain. These are not failures of discipline. They're accurate responses to reality. There's a quiet pressure, especially in thoughtful communities, to turn every hardship into growth, to find the lesson, to extract the meaning, to become better because of it. But not every life phase supports that, and insisting on it can become its own form of harm. Sometimes the ethical act is not to grow. It's not to abandon yourself while things are hard. To eat something when you can. To sit down when you need to. To not add one more layer of expectation on top of what is already too much. This may feel like resignation. It's not. It's precision. If your life is already full of discomfort, the work is not to tolerate more. The work is to reduce what can be reduced, to refuse what can be refused, and to stop adding pressure when there's already too much. For some people, in some seasons of life, that is the work. Not forever, but for now. If this is where you are, nothing in this framework is asking you to become more. It's asking you to protect what remains of you. This is not a philosophy of transcendence. It is a philosophy of staying intact. How do I remain intact when life asks too much? If your life already feels like too much, this is for you. If your body is deteriorating from stress, if you can't seem to catch a break long enough to take care of yourself, if your day is full before it begins, if you are carrying things that don't ever stop, if there is no real break, no real reset, no clean place to land, if your body is tired, if your mind is tired, if even small decisions feel heavy, then this is not a conversation about becoming more. You're already doing more than most people understand. You do not need to push yourself harder. You do not need to turn this into growth. You do not need to find the lesson right now. What you need is less. Less pressure, less expectation, less of the voice that says you should be handling this better. Start there. If something can be set down, even for a moment, set it down. If something does not have to be decided today, let it wait. If you can say, not now, instead of explaining everything, say less. If your body is asking to sit, sit. If it is asking to rest, rest. This is not giving up. This is staying with yourself. You're not required to carry everything at once, even if it feels like you are. There's something worth naming here. There is not you and your life. There is just life. When we collapse those two, me and my life, into one thing, when we believe the weight of it belongs to us personally, that we're the one carrying it, the one failing it, the one responsible for how heavy it is, we add something to an already full load. There's a small distance between you and the story of your life. And that distance is not nothing. That distance is where you can breathe. If all you do today is eat something, respond to one thing, and get through the day without turning against yourself, that counts. There's nothing small about that. You don't need a philosophy right now. You need enough space to stay intact. We can talk about more if more is necessary later, but not before this. Right now, the work is simple. Do less harm to yourself. Carry only what you must. Leave the rest where it is for now. That is enough. Part two, when life is not being met. So the second condition is not easy to talk about, but it needs to be named because leaving it out creates its own kind of harm. Not every difficult life is overburdened. Some are unmet. From the outside, these lives can look similar. Things aren't working. Stability isn't present. There's strain, but the internal structure is different. Here, the issue's not too much responsibility. It's not enough contact with reality. The capacity to organize, respond, or follow through is disrupted. And over time, what's avoided, well, begins to accumulate. No, okay, so depression, where basic tasks go untouched. Ongoing escape through substances, distraction, avoidance, where discomfort is managed, but nothing is addressed. Skills that were never learned, and now everything feels too overwhelming to organize. Not because the person doesn't care, but because contact with realities become too difficult to sustain. These are not moral categories, they are conditions. And they require a different kind of response. Now, that conversation deserves its own space. And if you recognize yourself here, you're not being dismissed. You are being named carefully. The work is different, and it deserves to be done with the same level of clarity and care. We'll come back to it. For now, it's enough to say, collapsing the two does harm to both. Ethical Adulthood Part 3, when there is no clean choice. So there are situations where the issue is not simply too much to carry. And it's not a failure to engage. It's something else. A life where every available option has a cost. Where taking responsibility in one direction creates harm in another. Where clarity does not immediately resolve the situation. Clarity does not make the decision easier, only more honest. In these lives, behaving as ethically as one can, that is, reducing self-harm, reducing harm to others, being able to repair when one has ruptured, processing grief without it leaking out sideways, and acting according to one's stated values without needing certainty, oh, it's much more difficult. Because for this person, each path has what appears to be an unacceptable cost. And often, nothing is done. And the life situation begins to deteriorate. Today, we stayed with one condition: when life asks too much. That work is real, and for many people, it's enough for now. We'll come back to the others I've mentioned in the next episodes. Thank you for being here. This is not easy work. Please know many people cannot even listen to this work. Who wants to listen to this work? Those of us who care deeply about how our actions affect not only our own psychology, but the environment with which we find ourselves in relationship with other people, in our jobs, when we go out into the world and we interact with strangers even. The way that we process these kinds of things matters. Even being able to stay with this kind of material increases capacities. I'm grateful for your listenership.